Burns, and playwright Anna Deavere Smith, three gifted storytellers who vividly chronicle the lives of others, but who know little about their own family history. To discover their ancestors, we've used every tool available. Genealogists help stitch together the past, using the paper trail their ancestors left behind, while geneticists utilize the latest advances in DNA analysis to reveal secrets thousands of years old.
This is your book of life?
And we've compiled everything into a book of life.
Where'd you find this picture? You're gonna make me cry.
Wow, this is getting better and better and better.
This is mind-blowing. I can't believe you didn't call me up and tell me this in advance.
The genealogies of Anderson Cooper, Ken Burns, and Anna Deavere Smith all intersect at a critical time in American history, the Civil War. Taken together, they show us just how profoundly one seminal event can connect the lives of three total strangers today.
He was the coolest guy I've ever met. And when we were kids...
Anderson Cooper is one of the most intrepid television journalists of our generation, fearlessly delivering first-hand accounts of the devastation caused by war, famine, and natural disasters all around the world.
For many trapped in the rubble of downtown Port-au-Prince, the struggle to live continues.
People on the street say there's a 15-year-old who's buried alive there and that they're talking.
The fact that Anderson chose the grueling life of a correspondent on the front lines is even more remarkable given the rarefied world in which he was raised. Born on June 3, 1967, Anderson is the son of writer Wyatt Cooper and high society heiress and designer Gloria Vanderbilt. His mother's name was synonymous with style and fashion. Gloria Vanderbilt jeans were the must-have item for almost every young American woman in the late 1970s. At his childhood home in New York City, Anderson's parents hosted some of the world's most influential writers, artists, and entertainers.
I always assumed that, I don't know, that everyone had Charlie Chaplin coming to their house and Truman Capote was over for dinner and all these interesting people. To me, it just seemed normal. It wasn't really until I was probably 11 years old, suddenly people started showing up on the street with my mom's name on their backside. And my brother and I had this game of how many people we could see in a day had my mom's name on, you know, on their bottoms. And I started to realize, oh, wait a minute, this is not so normal.
But their bubble of comfort and glamour would soon be punctured by tragedy and loss. Anderson was 10 years old when his father, Wyatt Cooper, died from a heart attack. 10 years later, Anderson's brother Carter committed suicide.
It drove me to go overseas and become a reporter and to go places where people were suffering because I wanted to understand loss and understand survival and figure out how I could survive in the world. I think, like a lot of people who experience loss, particularly early on in your life, I think it made me much more empathetic. We've lost two of the people in this picture, so, you know, there's not much of our family left, and that's a strange thing to realize.
Ken Burns is one of the country's most celebrated documentary filmmakers. His films on the Civil War and the history of jazz and baseball are etched into the national consciousness, not just for their scope, but for their signature style as well. Is there anything in particular that you're hoping to learn today?
The biggest thing is that my last name is Burns. My father's name was Robert. His father's name was Robert. And throughout my upbringing, we were told by relatives that we were somehow tangentially related to the poet Robert Burns. In fact, every bookcase in my family has Burns volumes. Mine is no exception.
All right, well, we'll deal with that last so you don't get up and walk away. Ken was born in 1953 in Brooklyn. He was just a boy when his father, Robert, a cultural anthropologist and film fanatic, took him to the movies. Before long, Ken was hooked.
I thought that I would be John Ford or Alfred Hitchcock or Howard Hawks. These were the directors of the films my father shared with me. You know, nobody pressured me to be an anthropologist or a doctor or a lawyer or an Indian chief. I was allowed to be what I wanted, and I knew I wanted to be a filmmaker. You know, this is where episode 2 of Vietnam is being edited. And
Like Anderson Cooper, Ken Burns experienced loss at an early age. In his case, it was his mother, Lila Tupper, whose death, Ken says, helped shape the kind of filmmaker he would become.
My mother died when I was 11 of a cancer that began when I was 2. And there was never a moment in my childhood where she wasn't dying and there wasn't the apprehension on the part of a very small boy that something really terrible was going to happen.
Do you feel in some way that she or her death inspired you to be a storyteller?
Yes, in a way. I had a really close friend who said, I bet you as a kid you blew out your candles wishing she'd come back. And I said, yeah, how'd you know? And he says, look what you do for a living. And I said, what do you mean? He said, you wake the dead. He said, you make Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass and Jackie Robinson and Louis Armstrong come alive. Who do you think you're really trying to wake up? I mean, I have this fierce desire to do well, making films about American history, but I want to do them really, really well, and that's for her, for sure.
I remember standing with you, getting ready to go in. We were like kids. We were so excited.
Actor and playwright Anna Deavere Smith has had roles on popular TV series like The West Wing and Nurse Jackie. But she's best known for writing and performing her groundbreaking one-woman shows on subjects ranging from the LA riots to the American presidency. Anna uncannily transforms herself into multiple characters, bringing to life a menagerie of personalities by perfectly mimicking their voices and their mannerisms.
I'm basically an Americanist. That's what I've been doing, is thinking that I can find America by listening to how people talk. What I've been trying to do is to embody and become America by becoming the voices.
Here we are, and we're still alive, and we hope that people will be alive when we come out.
Born in 1950 to school teacher Anna Young and coffee merchant Deaver Smith, Anna came of age in Baltimore just as racial integration was trying to take hold.
So these are, black folks in Baltimore during the Depression. This is my grandmother. I don't know how she did it. She took in laundry.
Early in childhood, Anna honed her keen skills of observation, carefully watching and listening, both at school and back at home.
Look at how little the cat is. No matter what was happening, if the family was there, if I was up in my room, I'd be listening. And I loved hearing people talk and loved watching people. Loved looking at my aunts and uncles when they came. They were very different. My father's side, they were glamorous.
What do you mean they were glamorous?
They were jazzy people. My mother's side was more humble. So I was very, very interested in who came from outside and looking at them. I've spent my career searching for, quote unquote, the other rather than for myself. And it makes me want to know more as a matter of history about my people and how they lived. I would love to know their stories.
Anderson, Anna, and Ken artfully examine the lives of a wide range of historical and contemporary figures. Tonight, I'm going to connect them with characters from their ancestral past and share stories that have long been hidden in the branches of their family trees.
That's incredible. I had no idea.
We started with Anderson Cooper. Born and raised in Manhattan, Anderson's Vanderbilt relatives played a major role in New York City's development. In fact, we're interviewing him today at one of his family's former Upper East Side mansions. This is your family house, man. Could I have a room when I come down from Boston?
I wouldn't mind living here now. It's pretty nice.
You recognize this person?
That's Cornelius Vanderbilt.
Yeah, we think that he looks a bit like you.
Really?
Yeah, there is a family
I
resemblance.
can sort of see it.
Cornelius Commodore Vanderbilt, Anderson's third great-grandfather, transformed his small ferry boat operation into one of the largest shipping and railroad companies in the world. When he died in 1877, the Commodore was worth more than $100 billion in today's currency, easily making him one of the richest men in the history of the United States and cementing the Vanderbilt family legacy. There's a huge statue of your third great-grandfather, Cornelius, in front of Grand Central Station.
I actually thought as a kid, this is going to sound absurd, I thought that all grandparents turned into statues when they died.
Along with magnificent monuments and grand buildings, the Vanderbilts left behind a much darker legacy of family turmoil. As a young girl, Anderson's mother, Gloria, found herself at the center of a heated and public custody battle that Anderson said tore their family apart and left his mother estranged from her Vanderbilt relatives.
My mom was taken away by the courts from her own mother when she was 10 years old, the height of the Depression, and given to an aunt who she didn't know. I always knew growing up that it was a extraordinarily painful thing for my mom and something that we never really talked about. And I grew up very happy that I didn't have that Vanderbilt name, because I think that name comes with a lot of baggage. You know, people always ask me about my mom's side of the family, but when I think to myself that I come from people, I think that I come from the Cooper side.
Anderson's father's line connects him to deep Southern roots.
My dad loved Mississippi, loved being from Mississippi, and he loved the stories that he grew up with and all the people he grew up with. And he wanted it very much to be part of my life and my brother's life.
You even say it right, Mississippi.
Mississippi, yes, exactly, yeah.
Unlike his Vanderbilt ancestors, whose story is part of American history books, Anderson knows very little about the Cooper family. So we wanted to tell him more about these Southern roots. Remarkably, our genealogists traced the Cooper line back 150 years in Mississippi to Anderson's great-grandfather, a man named William Preston Cooper. You recognize this man?
Never seen this.
That is your great-grandfather, and his name was William Preston Cooper.
Wow. God, I've never seen this picture.
We discovered that Anderson's great-grandfather and much of the Cooper family were not originally from Mississippi, but part of a wave of settlers who migrated to the Deep South seeking their fortunes cultivating cotton. The invention of the cotton gin created the biggest economic boom in American history, and by the early 1800s, planters like Anderson's ancestors wanted a piece of the action. I made my way to Mississippi to see what I could learn about how they fared. Were Anderson's Southern relatives among the lucky ones who made fortunes from King Cotton? Using census records from 1850 and 1860, we were able to piece together a picture of what life was like for Anderson's Cooper relatives after they arrived in Mississippi. you're looking at excerpts from the census records of some of your paternal ancestors.
Wow, this is amazing. William Anderson, farmer, owning $100 worth of land.
Mm-hmm.
Edward Bull, farmer, owning $500 worth of land. J.G. Berry, planter, owning $250 worth of land.
Does this exactly look like Rhett Butler and Gorman?
No. Yeah, there were no Cooper plantation houses, as far as I know.
You got that right. Your father's ancestors were small farmers and laborers, and they followed cotton into the Deep South, but they never got rich. And they hardly owned, as you could see, any property at all.
I mean, it shouldn't surprise me because it's, you know, I've seen the picture of the house my dad grew up in, and it's a shack. I mean, it's, you know, it was a pretty hard scrabble existence.
Contrary to popular belief, most white Southerners of that period didn't own big plantations. For every major landowner, there were thousands of small farmers, struggling just to make a living, much like Anderson's relatives. Because they farmed so little land, we wondered what role Anderson's Mississippi ancestors played during the Civil War. Were they among the more than 1 million Confederate soldiers who fought to preserve the Southern way of life? Sifting through Civil War service records, we found the answer. This is a service record of your great-great-grandfather.
It's incredible. How'd you find this? This is crazy.
That's Robert Fletcher Campbell, and he was born in 1822, and he volunteered to fight for the Confederacy.
I didn't know any of this. It's funny, as a kid, I always viewed the Civil War as the war between Mommy's side and Daddy's side.
Yeah, Mommy's side won.
Mommy's side won, yeah.
In fact, Robert Campbell was just one of several of Anderson's Southern relatives who fought for the Confederacy. His second great-grandfather, Burwell Cooper, served alongside his father-in-law in the Alabama infantry, while his great-great-grandmother's 5 brothers also served the South. In fact, your family, like a one-family Confederate army.
Great.
And what's fascinating, Anderson, is that none of these people owned any slaves.
Wow. So they didn't own slaves, but they still fought for the Confederacy.
They volunteered to fight for the Confederacy.
That's really interesting.
Anderson's ancestors are examples of a rather surprising fact about the men who joined the Confederacy. Only a small percentage actually owned slaves. So the average Southern soldier wasn't a slave owner, just a regular guy.
I guess when you think about it, it makes sense that it's sort of aspirational, isn't it? I mean, people sort of fight for what they hope one day to be able to achieve or the opportunity that they think it may bring them. You know, what they believe is possible.
This is sort of research center, looking for still photographs, finding them.
From the time he was a boy, Ken Burns had had a keen interest in the Civil War. And he's always known which side of the conflict he'd be on. This is so cool, man.
In the anticipation of the centennial of the Civil War, my brother and I were given a Civil War set. I, as the tyrannical older brother, which he will more than quickly agree, I made him always be the Confederates while I was the Union.
But during the making of his magnificent Civil War series, Ken was shocked to discover that he had ancestors who fought on the side of the Confederacy. Still, there was much he didn't know about his family's experiences during the war. To give him a fuller picture, we took a closer look at a man who was living in Virginia when the war broke out. Born in 1833, he's Ken's great-great-grandfather, Abraham Burns. Abraham Burns was 29 years old when he enlisted in John McClanahan's Horse Artillery Company, fighting for the South during the last years of the war. Buried in the Civil War archive, we discovered a detail about his service that we didn't expect. We found a document which shows Ken's great-great-grandfather was one of more than 200,000 Confederate soldiers imprisoned during the war. But surprisingly, he was among those given the opportunity to win back his freedom. but only if he swore an oath of allegiance to the Union.
That's unbelievable. Roll of prisoners of war, Camp Chase, Ohio, who have applied for the oath of allegiance from December 1st to 15th, 1864, states that he was conscripted and forced to join the rebels.
Do you really think that was true?
No. I think that was a likely story.
I don't want to do it.
Look, they forced me to do this, man.
I love Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah, I love Abraham Lincoln.
You've said that you have, quote, no sentimentality about the cause, unquote, that the South was fighting for. But you've also defended Confederate soldiers such as your ancestor.
Well, I'm not sure defend is the right word. You just have to accept your family.
You can't undo it.
You can't undo it. You know, you don't look at that old photo album of you with the paisley shirt and the wide collars from the 70s and rip that out. You go, no, that was true. So I think this is true. I have great-grandfathers who fought for the North. You know, I just think that Abraham Burns, because he's in that direct eyesight of my life, that is to say, he's my grandfather's grandfather. This is a big deal. And it's something I didn't expect, being someone in support of the Union.
But Abraham Burns is not Ken's only Civil War ancestor. We found another one. Also named Abraham, his story has been hidden in Ken's family tree for generations. Born in Virginia as well, he's Ken's second great-grandfather, Abraham Smith. Have you ever heard of Abraham Smith?
Well, I'm assuming that he's the Smith that gives my grandmother her last name.
That's right. Could you please turn the page? Can you read what it says at the top of the page?
No. Slave Schedule, 1860. Unbelievable.
You know what that means.
Indeed.
Your third great-grandfather, Abraham Smith, owned 6 slaves in 1860, a year before the Civil War broke out, including an 11-year-old girl. Any idea that you had slaves in the family?
You know, I've sort of assumed that it was impossible not to have been touched by it. But this still hurts, and another Abraham to boot. I got Confederate privates and Virginia slaveholders.
That puts the Civil War in another perspective.
You know, I don't feel guilty because I know this is process. This is true, you know? But at the same time, there's a kind of sadness. I now have personal connection to this thing that I find so repugnant and so un-American, and yet such a peculiarly American institution, which is slavery and all the things that go with it. And that's interesting because my mother never mentioned that. My grandmother would not have mentioned that, though I'm sure, I mean, this is the thing. If you don't talk about it, then the next generation forgets it, and they don't talk about it.
That's true.
My mother's house, 6-bedroom house, burned down. It was so sad. But this is one of the few remaining photographs.
Silences through the generations have left Anna Deavere Smith with little knowledge of her own family history. Like many African-American families, Anna's ancestors chose to look to the future rather than dwell on a painful, troubled past.
My grandfather actually didn't tell me anything much about his family, and I spent a lot of time with him, and I was a listener, so it's odd.
So many of our stories, particularly for Black people, have been lost because people just didn't want to talk about the past. It was just too much to bear.
Right.
We wanted to help Anna unearth her deepest roots, to see what stories were buried there. Almost immediately, we uncovered something quite remarkable about Anna's heritage. Not only is she descended from slaves, but from a long line of free people of color as well. You have a free Negro lineage going back to 12 years after the end of the American Revolution.
Boy, then there's no excuse. I should have made something of myself.
Never, ever cross your mind that you would have free Negro ancestors in your family tree?
Oh, I didn't know. I mean, I didn't know.
Just 3 generations into Anna's past, we discovered a free black ancestor she didn't even know existed. Her great-great-grandfather, a man named Basil Biggs. And we found his life so extraordinary, we wanted to share all of it with her. You recognize those people?
Whoa, no.
Anna, meet your great-great-grandparents.
Wow.
That's Basil Biggs.
Right. Well, I have an Uncle Basil, yes.
Well, now you know why.
Wow.
And that is your great-great-grandmother, Mary Jackson. You never heard of these people?
Never.
Basil Biggs and Mary Jackson were both born in Maryland around 1820. And by 1850, more than a decade before the start of the Civil War, the United States Census indicated that Basil and Mary were married and free. In 1858, Basil, a free man of color and a veterinarian, moved his wife and 4 children from the slave state of Maryland to the free state of Pennsylvania. But he couldn't have chosen a more dangerous place to move. In the summer of 1863, just 5 years after arriving in Pennsylvania, Basil Biggs would find himself right in the middle of one of the most devastating battles in the history of war, the Battle of Gettysburg. Now, this obituary, Anna, is for Celia Biggs Penn, Basil's daughter, who died in 1936. And it gives us a sense of what your ancestors did in the fateful days right before the battle.
Mrs. Penn, last of kin who fled 63 battle, dies. The only colored persons in this section, the Biggs family, was warned to leave this section with the approach of the Confederate troops.
Okay, so
Wow.
your ancestors fled
Unbelievable.
the Confederate invasion. Now, remember, it's 3 days of combat, right?
Right.
And Basil's farm was converted into a field hospital
Huh.
by the Confederates.
My God, that's a story right there. That's an amazing, that's a play.
Basil and his family fled the Confederate invasion just in the nick of time. As the fighting dragged on, desperate soldiers ransacked the countryside for food and shelter. When the battle was over, the Biggs family returned to find their farm in ruins. They had lost everything: their furniture, their livestock, and their crops. Not only did they find their property destroyed, but the landscape around Gettysburg was littered with rotting corpses. Now, I'm sure you've seen this famous image of the horrifying aftermath of the Battle of Gettysburg. And for you, Anna, it illustrates the situation that your great-great-grandfather confronted in 1863. He saw that there was a job to be done, a job that nobody else wanted to do.
Uh-oh.
Could you please turn the page?
Oh, my God. Basil Biggs, colored of Gettysburg, was given the contract for disinterring the bodies on the field. He had a crew of about 8 or 10 Negroes in his employ.
The rapidly decomposing bodies of Union and Confederate soldiers were both a morbid reminder of the toll taken by the war's bloodiest battle and an impending health hazard. The United States government had to do something about this, and quickly. So they contracted with a white Gettysburg resident who hired Anna's great-great-grandfather to do the grisly, nightmarish work of exhuming Union soldiers from their shallow graves. It took nearly 8 months, but Basil Biggs and his crew buried thousands of corpses into neatly ordered rows of graves in what would become the Gettysburg National Cemetery. These free black men cleared the way for the address that began with these immortal words. 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation. Basil and his team made it possible for Abraham Lincoln to deliver his address that fall. I mean, you have a purchase on American history at one of its foundational moments.
I have to tell you that, I had a play that didn't work very well about American history called House Arrest. And there are lots of things that people tell you that criticize your work that are upsetting. But the most upsetting thing to me about the way people criticize that work is that they said that I should go back and do what I've been doing. The stuff that's about me, which is about race riots. As if I don't have any claim on American history. And I would always say, I really don't appreciate that. Not knowing anything about this, but to now know some things about my people, it's really upsetting. To be relegated to this one place, I have to tell you that this is very, 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 very powerful. And if you hadn't invited me to do this, I could have lived my life without having ever read this paragraph.
Many African Americans like Anna know very little about their families before the end of slavery. One reason is the natural impulse to suppress the details of a painful past. But noble stories like that of Basil Biggs have to be remembered and retold. They must become part of our national narrative. For Anderson Cooper, we discovered a story about one of his forefathers so disturbing that his family had completely erased it. We've already introduced Anderson to his ancestors who fought for the Confederacy, even though they had little or no financial stake in the Southern way of life. While researching his Cooper family, we discovered someone who did have a real stake in the antebellum South. Born in Burke County, Georgia in 1787, this man is Anderson's fourth great-grandfather, Burwell Boykin. This is part of the 1850 census, and it shows that your ancestor, Burwell Boykin, what he owned at the time.
Total acres of land, 620. Cash value of farm, $6,000.
$6,000.
That's a lot of money back then.
That's serious money, and it's a lot of land. Our researchers believe that he was the most successful farmer in your family during the entire 19th century.
That's amazing. $6,000. That's incredible.
But as we dug a little deeper, we found that land was not the only thing that Burwell Boykin owned.
Wow. Slave inhabitants in the county of Choctaw, Alabama, 1850. These are slaves he owned?
These are the slaves he owned. Wow. Your fourth great-grandfather owned 12 people, ranging in age from 1 to 60.
Oh my God. That's incredible.
Did you know about that?
Never heard anything about it. Having family from the Deep South, I'm not surprised that there's some, at least one slaveholder. But I also kind of always thought my relatives were so poor that they wouldn't have had slaves.
Well, you're almost right.
It's really depressing, especially when you see the ages. And the fact that there are no names, I just find so disturbing. I'm sort of curious by the blank spaces on this ledger.
What kind of master do you think he was?
I shudder to think.
We found the answer to that question in a most unlikely place, the United States Census. One of the most commonly used documents in our research, the federal census revealed something that we've never seen in all our years of ancestry investigation, and it shocked us. Now, this is the 1860 U.S. Census.
Holy crap. Burwell Boykin, cause of death, killed by Negro.
Boykin was murdered by a rebellious slave.
Wow.
Your ancestor was beaten to death with a farm hoe.
Oh my God. That's amazing. This is incredible. I'm blown away.
You think he deserved it?
Yeah,
You do?
I have no doubt.
It's a horrible way to die, Anderson.
He had 12 slaves. I don't feel bad for him.
Okay.
Honestly, part of me thinks that's awesome.
But it is your blood ancestor.
Yeah, so I don't want to offend other relatives of mine. I feel bad for the man who killed him, and I feel bad for the 11 other unnamed people who God only knows what happened to them.
The avenging slave who killed Anderson's fourth great-grandfather was hanged without a trial. Retribution for his bold act of rebellion. So you can see the slaves did rebel, but they rebelled in small ways.
Small
with
ways.
Devastating personal consequences.
Yeah. I wish I knew more. I wish I knew the name of the slave.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you think about how many people's names history just never remembers, and people whose stories are never told.
Absolutely.
It's shameful, and I feel a sense of shame over it. And at the same time, it's the history of this country.
The Civil War ancestors of our three guests are a cross-section of the American experience during the most pivotal time in our nation's history. With Ken Burns, we shared some unexpected things about two of his ancestors, one held as a prisoner of war and the other who held slaves. But when we moved up his family tree, we found that Ken has an ancestor who played a unique role in a much earlier conflict. He's Ken's paternal fifth great-grandfather, Gerardus Clarkson. Now, this is an excerpt from the minutes of the Council of Safety in New York from September 16th, 1776. The Council of Safety was a patriot organization during the Revolutionary War.
Resolve that a house be taken for a hospital. Resolve that Dr. Gerardus Clarkson be appointed to attend the sick in the said hospital.
Your fifth great-grandfather, Dr. Gerardus Clarkson, was a surgeon.
Wow.
For the Board of War in 1776 and 1777. I think that's very cool, man.
That is very, very cool, you know.
Ken's fifth great-grandfather's experience with the crude, often barbarous surgical techniques used during the Revolutionary War made him a leading advocate for modernizing medicine. In fact, we came across a document that revealed the role that Dr. Clarkson played in the founding of the College of Physicians in Philadelphia, an institution dubbed the birthplace of American medicine. Your ancestor helped the medical profession advance beyond the horrendous practices of the war and encourage the advancement of modern medicine.
That is very cool. That is very cool.
Ken's Revolutionary War ancestry doesn't end with Gerardus Clarkson. We also found another ancestor on his mother's family tree who played a different role in this country's battle against colonial rule. Born in 1754 in Sandwich, Massachusetts, he's Ken's maternal fifth great-grandfather and bears the unusual name of Eldad Tupper.
Wish I'd had that name. Oh, well, I don't have a boy, but Eldad is great.
When your kids have kids?
Eldad.
Eldad.
Gotta be there. Well, I'm gonna call it my daughter, who is pregnant right now with the first son that we've seen for years.
That's his name.
So Eldad, you know?
Now, Ken, this is a military muster roll from 1778 during the height of the American Revolution.
Seconded officers, regiment they belong to, Lieutenant Eldad Tupper.
At this time, Massachusetts, of course, was a patriot stronghold. But do you see the Massachusetts Brigade or State Infantry number here anywhere?
Regiment. I don't see it. Is it here? Am I missing it?
No, Ken. There are no state infantry numbers because the Continental armies were not on this chart. Your ancestor was a loyalist.
Oh no, a Tory! Now, God help me.
He fought for the Brits.
Okay, let me just take back everything I said about Eldad and the name. This name, Eldad, is dying a final death back in 1832 in Brockville, Canada. See, of course he's in Brockville. That should have been the kicker. We know why he's in Canada.
You got that right. He was not down with George Washington. He was with King George. Your fifth great-grandfather was a loyalist. He served aboard a British ship for more than a year. You go, no. He was later honorably discharged, to his credit, in Halifax, and he moved to Elizabethtown Township in Upper Canada to live out his days. Now, what do you think of that? You have ancestors who fought on both sides of the American Revolution. They could have been shooting at each other.
This is the thing I'm most ashamed of. I am humiliated by this part, right? Because I bleed red, white, and blue, and this is not the Union Jack, and this is terrible. This is so cruel. I mean, this is the way this works, right? You tease with a doctor here and a lawyer there, and then all of a sudden you've got a slave owner, and then you've got a Tory.
Genealogy giveth, and genealogy taketh away. While we were surprised to find that Ken had ancestors on opposite sides of the colonial conflict, that wasn't all we discovered about his relatives from that era. We found that Gerardus Clarkson, the Revolutionary War surgeon, connects Ken to another ancestor who helped heal the nation's wounds. Your ancestor, Gerardus Clarkson, connects you to one of America's greatest heroes. Can you guess who that might be?
Well, my greatest hero is Abraham Lincoln, so I'm hoping that this is where the line goes. There he is.
Abraham Lincoln is your fifth cousin, 4 times removed.
Wow. I need a little bit more respect now.
And you are one of the few Americans who's related to a Confederate private on one line.
Named Abraham.
Yes, and another Abraham who happened to be the president of the Union. What do you think your Confederate ancestor would think if we brought him back?
Who the hell cares? It's Abraham Lincoln. I mean, this is the bee's knees. This is the guy that I have in my soul. You know, this is just too good to be true.
It's amazing.
I love it.
Before Ken's ancestor, Abraham Lincoln, could deliver his most famous address, Anna's ancestor, Basil Biggs, first had to clear the many dead bodies from the battlefield at Gettysburg. Basil was left with the task of rebuilding his life, and so we were eager to tell Anna how her great-great-grandfather and his family made out. Now, Anna, this is Basil and Mary Jane on the farm that he bought after the Civil War.
Wow. Boy.
Your great-great-grandfather used the money he earned digging up all those dead bodies and reburying them to rebuild his life, purchasing a new farm where the family could live and thrive.
Makes me proud.
Could you please turn the page? Now, this article appeared in the Cleveland Gazette in 1892.
Whoa.
It tells the story of a Mr. Scotland who met Basil when he visited Gettysburg.
He is a veterinary surgeon and is reputed to be the wealthiest. What? He is a veterinary surgeon and is reputed to be the wealthiest Afro-American in Gettysburg. He has a large practice, and his residence is a magnificent one, surrounded by 120 acres of land.
It's incredible.
Incredible.
How could your family have lost the story of this man? His picture should have been up over everyone's mantelpiece.
Or they just didn't talk about it. They just didn't talk about it. Why wouldn't they talk about it?
Of all the stories that we uncovered, we saved the most remarkable one for last. A story showing that there was even more to the improbable life of Anna's ancestor, the free man of color, Basil Biggs. This is your great-great-grandfather's obituary, and it's a testament to his many achievements. And it tells us about Basil's most impressive accomplishment of all.
Leading colored citizen, was an active agent in the Underground Railroad.
He was a conductor.
Wow. That's incredible.
And there it is in black and
While
white.
slavery existed, he was an active agent in the Underground Railroad, helping fugitives to freedom. Oh, this is amazing. This man was amazing.
The Underground Railroad involved a vast network of people who, like Basil Biggs, provided safe haven for slaves escaping bondage in the South. Runaway slaves who made it across the Ohio River or the Mason-Dixon line could find refuge in the network's web of secret locations. You see, Basil was in a unique position to help precisely because he was a veterinarian, which gave him reason to travel without raising suspicion. And Anna, the kicker is, what he was doing was breaking the law. It was a federal offense to do what your great-great-grandfather did.
But great thinkers, Martin Luther King among them, in a letter from a Birmingham jail, make a clear line between a just law and an unjust law.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't break a moral law, but he broke a law that was an unjust law. It means a lot to me.
Absolutely. I mean, a federal offense.
Right. His freedom and his all those children.
Yeah. But
And he could have just had a very nice life.
Yeah. Free black man making huge sacrifices to raise his family, willing to risk everything to help other African Americans escape from slavery. Now that is the definition of heroism.
Boy, it's very powerful, I have to say. Wow, amazing.
We traced the family histories of our guests back centuries and learned that each of them has ancestors deeply rooted in the founding and shaping of our country. Now, this is your family tree on both sides.
Wow.
While Anderson's Cooper family roots went far deeper into the American South than he ever suspected, he was even more surprised to find a rags to riches story on his mother Gloria's family tree. We discovered that his first Vanderbilt ancestor arrived here from the Netherlands in the early 17th century with little more than the clothes on his back. But of all the ancestors to whom we introduced him on his family tree, the one he wanted to meet the most was one he already knew. If you could meet through the wizardry of a time machine any one of your ancestors, who would it be?
Well, this may sound silly, but if I could meet anybody, I'd meet my dad.
Oh, yeah. That doesn't sound silly.
Yeah. If I could sit down and interview anybody, I'd sit down and interview him and just find out what he thinks of me and, you know, what he thinks of all that's gone.
I know what he'd think about what he would admire you, man. He'd be proud. Wow. That is your family tree. For Ken Burns, who always wanted to know if he was a descendant of the poet Robert Burns, the paper trail ran cold and didn't confirm his family's legend. So we turned to the science of DNA. All three of our guests took DNA tests to unlock their genetic ancestry. We compared the DNA that Ken inherited from all of his ancestors to known relatives of the Scottish poet. And we got lucky. Do you know what that means?
He's a cousin.
You are related to Robert Burns?
Yeah.
This is a slam dunk. You have that in your genome. You are indeed related to Robert Burns. It's not a direct line of descent, but you are cousins of some kind.
Fantastic.
Now, these are all the ancestors that we found. We couldn't tell you stories. For Anna DeVere Smith, like so many African Americans, most of her paper trail ends where freedom begins, after slavery. So we wanted to see what DNA could tell us about her origins.
Well, I would like to know where I come from in Africa if you were able to find that out.
While most African Americans descend from ancestors taken during the transatlantic slave trade, few are able to identify the ethnic group or the region they came from back in Africa. To find out, we compared Anna's DNA results with those of modern-day Africans, allowing us to look back thousands of years and pinpoint her ethnic roots in Africa, long before the Middle Passage. Can you read what it says there?
That I'm from the Igbo tribe
Right. You share maternal ancestry from the Igbo people
in Nigeria.
in present-day Nigeria.
Wow.
Now, I know you've traveled in Africa. Have you ever spent time in Nigeria?
No. But when I was in Uganda, I went to visit a place where they did traditional healing. And the doctor who was in charge of this, he came to me and said that one of the, I guess, witch doctors wanted to know if I would like to be blessed by my ancestors. And so I said, well, of course I want to be blessed by my ancestors. You know what the blessing was? I got spat on 3 times with mouthfuls of banana peel. So this acquaintance with my ancestors is a lot more tame than that. And even when you said, you know, you're on for quite a ride, I'm glad I didn't get spat on.
Was it a ride?
This was a ride. Thank you.
That's right.
Anderson Cooper, Ken Burns, and Anna Deavere Smith all closed their books of life with a much clearer idea of the colorful people from whom they descend and a fuller sense of who they are. Join me next time when we reveal the secrets of the past for 3 more guests on the next episode of Finding Your Roots. And Tom Colicchio, 3 men who've won fame by cooking the dishes of their ancestors.
So thank you so much for having me.
I want to cook 50% as good as my mom and 50% as good as my grandmother. Then I'm doing something right.
The gathering at the dining table, that was our epicenter.
Christmas came and, you know, there may have been ham, but there was a lasagna first.
It's a story of how America's food has been shaped by its immigrants. A story of recipes passed from generation to generation.
I was just fascinated by the combination of fire and steam and smoke and the noise and the smell. That was my music.
A story that brings our guests face to face with family they never knew they had. To tell it, we've used every tool available. Genealogists help map out our guests' ancestors, tracing the paper trail that they left behind, while geneticists have drawn on the latest advances in DNA analysis to reveal secrets hundreds of years old.
This, my friend, is your...
And we've compiled everything into a book of life, a record of all of our discoveries.
Oh my God, look at all these Italians. This is amazing.
He's in the lineage. That is a shock. I don't know how you got this.
Is that Rafa? That's unbelievable. I can't even believe that.
The ancestors of Tom Colicchio, Ming Tsai, and Aaron Sanchez show us how food can bring us together, bridging cultures and generations. Maybe that's why they call America the melting pot.
I actually started coming here to shop for the restaurants, and I would come in literally, this is 25 years ago, I would literally take my truck and drive it into the market.
Really?
Park next to, you try that now, they'll throw you out, you get arrested.
Tom Colicchio is a culinary superstar. He owns more than a dozen award-winning restaurants across the country. But he's just as comfortable at his local farmer's market as he is on the set of his hit show, Top Chef. He's a man who simply adores food, and he'll happily talk for hours about how he first fell in love with it in the kitchen of his large Italian family.
I mean, food was a way of life in your family.
It was. You know, we had to be home every night at the table. Dinner, it was 7 days a week. Sunday was when we had macaroni. Now, it wasn't pasta, it was macaroni and gravy. But the gravy was tomato sauce. It was wonderful.
Tom grew up in Elizabeth, New Jersey, surrounded by aunts, uncles, and grandparents, all Italians, all sharing recipes. He remembers entire meals from his childhood as if they were served yesterday.
We would do crabs. Now, our crab feast in the summer was really special because we would take the crabs and put them in marinara sauce.
Oh.
That was sometimes a 4-hour meal because we would just sit there and pick crabs. And everybody had a method of doing it. Some people actually picked and ate, and some people picked and put on the side and then ate at the end. And people who had to pile at the end, you try to steal from them. In fact, I didn't realize that you can eat crab another way.
Tom started working in restaurants when he was 14 years old, and he's never stopped.
Is the wood sorrel on any of these dishes?
Today, he oversees a food empire, cooking dishes of extraordinary complexity. But he's still drawn to the simple recipes of his immigrant ancestors.
You know, I think if you talk to most chefs, no matter how fancy their food is, it's not what they want to eat. We want to eat, you know, peasant food. That's what we like. And I think because we all realize that's where it all started.
Macaroni and gravy on Sunday at 3.
That's it. That's where it all starts.
Like Tom, Ming Tsai is devoted to his family's traditions. He grew up in Dayton, Ohio, where his father worked as an engineer. Both his parents were Chinese immigrants, and Dayton was a long way from home. But they kept in touch with their roots in their kitchen. Were there many other Chinese Americans in Dayton, Ohio?
You know, there are very few. Our family joke was when we had the 2 or 3 Chinese families over to our house, we were Chinatown. And always surrounded by food, right? All we did was cook and eat. And while we're eating dinner, we're talking about what are we eating next and who's going to do the shopping, who's going to buy this, who's going to do the prep. My whole life has really been based around food, period. All right, so on this part of the wok, we have some oil, we'll add some garlic and ginger.
Today, Ming is one of the most popular chefs on television. I visited him on the set of his signature show, Simply Ming, where he's been celebrating Chinese food for 11 seasons.
Can you imagine we used to do 2,000 of these?
Watching him work was pure joy.
All right, there we go.
He told me he's been cooking for as long as he can remember.
You know, the first thing was my mom, 6 years old. I went into the kitchen and I just wanted to learn how to make a Duncan Hines cake. And she helped me. Eggs, oil, boom, mix, cake. And I was just fascinated.
Yeah.
And I just thought, this is amazing. And whenever I walked home, I would run to the kitchen first. Like, what's for dinner? You know, it wasn't what's on TV or blah, 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 just what's for dinner.
My third guest is Aaron Sanchez. He's an award-winning chef and a Food Network luminary, host of the hit show Heat Seekers, and a recurring judge on Chopped. And like Ming Tsai and Tom Colicchio, Aaron is absolutely passionate about his family's food.
I'm still cooking my grandmother's recipes that she grew up eating. I'm still cooking those recipes to this day at my restaurants. You know, like I'll do different empanadas, I'll do different moles, I'll do ceviches.
So it's a culinary memory.
It is, and it's a way of paying respect to your legacy and to where you're from.
Growing up in a Mexican-American family in El Paso, Texas, Aaron was introduced to cooking by his mother, Zarela Martinez, who ran a catering business as a way to make money after her marriage collapsed. For Aaron, learning his way around the kitchen was part of learning to survive.
My parents got divorced when we were at a very young age. and we would go back and forth. My dad would have me on the weekends. I'd be with my mom during the week. And we lived really tough. My mom had no money, you know, and we were really struggling.
Their struggles were solved when Zarela made a dramatic decision. She packed her family in a van and moved to New York City, where she opened a Mexican restaurant. Over time, her restaurant would become the vanguard of Mexican cuisine in Manhattan. It would ultimately bring her stability and lead her son to his career.
So there, when you were growing up, there was never anything like only girls are supposed to cook.
Oh no, not in my house. No, you know, and there's this philosophy out there, this train of thought that says women cook to nourish you like your mom does, and men are the artist.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I never agree with that. I mean, if you said that in my house, you get smacked.
I was gonna say, what's your mom say about that?
You have to understand, my mom was the dad, my mom was the mom, she was the breadwinner, she was everything in our house. That's another reason that we respected our industry in the cooking world so much, because it provided for us, it sustained us. And we never got in this to be famous or to be, you know, recognized for those things. It was more about taking care of the fam.
America's tastes have been shaped by our immigrants. All over the country, you can find Chinese, Mexican, and Italian restaurants. You might think of them as the holy trinity of American cuisine. Tom, Ming, and Aaron each come from families that recently immigrated to the United States, and each treasures the dishes of their ancestors. But I was shocked to learn that for all three, crucial details about those ancestors had been lost on the journey to America. So I wanted to help find them.
My mother, my father.
Look at that.
I started with Aaron Sanchez.
Oh, who's that?
That's my mom.
Okay. But these are her siblings. Tell the story.
Aaron has a powerful sense of his Mexican heritage.
My mother, my father.
It flows from his mother, Zarela Martinez, who taught him about his family's roots as she taught him family recipes.
So that's Hilario.
By the way, this is delicious.
Well, you still have this to taste.
Good, I'm coming.
In her home today, Zarela still makes the dishes that Aaron grew up with.
And these are chorizos con papa.
But the story of those dishes started 2,000 miles away on a cattle ranch in Sonora, Mexico, where Zarela grew up. A ranch that has an almost mythical stature in family lore.
My dad painted, so he did that painting of the ranch. That was our whole property.
That's great. Tell me about the ranch. What was it like?
Oh, it was heaven. It's an integral part of who I am and my being and my soul and everything else. I was made for the ranch, you know. I loved it.
It was really the place that I think forged this strong woman that is my mom. She speaks so highly of it, from all the cowboys to the food, to the riding of the horses, to my grandmother making fresh cheeses. It was the place.
This is the ranch in Sonora, Mexico, where Zarela was raised. It lies less than 200 miles from the American border. This is cattle country, and it has provided Mexico's beef for centuries. Many of the dishes that Aaron's family brought to America were first cooked here. But Aaron had no idea how hard one of his ancestors had fought to get this ranch. In fact, the ranch might not exist at all were it not for the efforts of one man, Aaron's great-great-grandfather, Rafael Gabilondo.
Now, do you recognize that person?
Is that Rafa?
Yeah, that's right. That's your great-great-grandfather.
Oh, Papi Rafael.
Uh-huh.
Look at that stash. That's how you rocked it back in the day. You got no respect if you were clean shaven.
He looks pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Rafael was born into a prominent family, and by the time he was a young man, he'd become one of the wealthiest cattle owners in northern Mexico. But his fortunes unraveled in a flash. In 1910, Mexico exploded into a revolution, a bloody, all-out war that would ultimately claim nearly 1 million lives. Its causes were complex, but one of the issues that fueled the revolt was land ownership. For more than 30 years, Mexico had been ruled by a dictator, Porfirio Diaz, whose government worked to concentrate power and wealth in the hands of a few. Laws made it almost impossible for Mexican peasants to own their own farms. Then, in November of 1910, a group of rebels rose up, calling for widespread social change, starting with land reform. The country was torn apart, and Arón's ancestor feared for his life. So he abandoned the ranch, all of his cattle, and virtually everything he owned to make a run for the U.S. border. That's how Arón's family first arrived in this country, with almost nothing, part of a massive wave of refugees.
More than 890,000 Mexicans fled north to the United States to avoid the revolution. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah, man.
And I didn't know that many people were affected by it.
So you didn't know that your family originally came because of the revolution?
No, but I can imagine why. You know, they were probably frowned upon. Look at you guys. You guys are living high on the hog, and
Sure.
we're over here fighting for this country. And
You're the enemy.
you're the enemy, in
Right,
essence.
'cause you're
Yeah.
rich.
And imagine how that must have made you feel as a Mexican national to have, in essence, your countrymen trampling over your land and disrespecting what you have.
Oh, man.
You know, that must have been really hard for a person to have dealt with.
Sure, it would drive me crazy.
Yeah, I mean, you felt like you felt like your country let you down.
Rafael Gabilondo entered Texas a fugitive from his own people. And even as his family began to assimilate in their new country, he remained focused on his homeland. He had left an enormous herd of cattle behind in Mexico, and he was determined to get it back. After 4 years of near constant effort, he succeeded. And we found a remarkable newspaper article from 1913 that told us exactly how he did it.
Rafael Gabilondo has received permission from the Secretary of Treasury to cross 2,000 head of cattle from the ranches of the Gabilondo brothers.
Isn't that cool?
Wow, so he got a chance to get his stuff back.
At the height of the Mexican Revolution, while armies were destroying his property, your ancestor somehow managed to persuade the United States government to allow him to bring 2,000 head of cattle from that ranch into the United States. He must have been a badass dude.
Oh, no, he probably had what you call nowadays game.
He had total game.
You know?
Rafael made the most of his cattle. In 1931, almost 2 decades after fleeing his homeland, he had finally saved up enough money to buy a new ranch in Mexico, the ranch where his descendants would live for generations to come.
That is awesome. Think of the courage you must have had, you know?
Well, he lost it and got it back.
Mm-hmm. It really makes me feel proud.
Like Arón, Tom Colicchio grew up savoring the food of his ancestors, but knew very little about the actual lives of those ancestors. Tom, did you ever hear any stories about what life was like for your grandparents back in Italy?
Never. Never. I got to tell you, I have not heard a single story about how they grew up. Never heard it.
Tom told me that he knew that his grandfather, Felix, was born in the small town of Vallata, Italy, but he had no idea how or when Felix came to America. Our search took us to Ellis Island, where so many Italians entered this country. Here we found our first clue, a ship's manifest from 1901. It documented the arrival of Felix's father, Francesco Antonio Colicchio, or as he was sometimes called, Francesco.
Francesco Colicchio, 20 years old, a laborer arriving in New York from Vallata with $27.
$27 bucks.
$27.
But this record also raised a very large question.
Tom, there's a mystery here. Now remember, his son, your grandfather Felix, was born in Vallata in 1903.
Okay.
And he is landing in New York in 1901.
Yeah.
So how is this possible? If the father left Vallata in June of 1901, how could his son have been born there 2 years later in 1903? Any theories?
Scandal in the Colicchio household. Uh-oh.
Was Felix an illegitimate child? Did you ever hear any stories about this?
None.
When we tried to understand this, we discovered something surprising. Records showed that Tom's great-grandfather, Francesco Antonio, immigrated to America in 1901. But then at some point, he returned to Italy, where he fathered Tom's grandfather, Felix. And then he returned to the United States a second time in 1906. We don't think of immigrants as going back and forth between Europe and America. But it turns out Francesco Antonio's behavior was not all that unusual. In the early 20th century, more than half of the Italians who came to America made repeat trips across the Atlantic, earning money in the United States to bring it home to Italy. Some made dozens of crossings, living apart from their families for years at a time. Historians called them birds of passage. It's a sweet term for what must have been a hard and lonely experience.
This is not a part of the immigration story that most of us are aware of.
Right.
Can you imagine what their experience was like being separated from their loved ones for years at a time?
No. I couldn't imagine being away from my children for 7 years right now. That's a tough passage back then, too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And they were in steerage.
Yeah. I don't think they were up on the top.
Francesco Antonio and his countrymen weren't on top in the United States either. In the early 20th century, Italians were near the very bottom of American society. They were mostly confined to crowded cities, where they did menial labor and were widely despised for their Catholicism, their social customs, even their dark skin. One of the reasons that Tom knows so little about his family history is that Italian Americans, for generations, chose not to speak about that painful past. Their stories, even about their homeland, were lost in their silence.
What does it suggest to you about his life back in Italy? I mean, he wanted to go back.
Well, he wanted to go back, but he had to take care of his family. So I'm assuming that they weren't able to make a living there, and he was doing it here and saving up what he could and going back. And you know, it's a big sacrifice. I mean, number one, it's a sacrifice to leave your family, but then to continually go back. And also at this point, he was. Just go back a little bit. He was 35, so he's getting up in age too.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, back then, 35 was probably equivalent to 50 now, and so it was just getting tougher and tougher.
Tom had no idea just how tough things were about to get for his great-grandfather. In 1911, Francesco Antonio returned to Vallata yet again, his third trip across the Atlantic. But this time, his homeland was on the brink of chaos. In July of 1914, Europe was engulfed by the First World War. Tom's great-grandfather was pressed into the Italian army and soon found himself in one of the war's great stalemates. For 3 years, the Italians struggled to take a tiny stretch of Macedonia from Germany and its allies. 15% of Francesco Antonio's fellow Italians were killed or wounded. Many more were taken prisoner. And although he survived, Francesco Antonio returned to an Italy that was economically ravaged, an Italy that would soon descend into fascism, and then the chaos of World War II. But Tom's great-grandfather endured, and in 1947, he made one final trip across the Atlantic. This time, he brought his family with him.
It says Colicchio Francesco Antonio, 69 years old. And Maria Dominica, 69. So they were 69 when they actually came for the last time.
The fourth immigration document.
Yeah.
Since his first trip to the United States, let's recapitulate. Remember, that was in 1901.
1901, right.
Francesco Antonio had returned to Italy at least 3 times, fought in the First World War, fathered 2 children, and lived through World War II. I mean, my God, that's a lot of history, man.
Francesco Antonio, I think, is the key. Because at a certain point, he could have stayed there.
I know.
And that would have been it. There wouldn't have been a Colicchio family in the States. And so this guy right here is the key.
4 trips.
Yeah, 4 trips. Wow.
Like Tom and Aron, Ming Tsai's original immigrant ancestors endured remarkable hardships on their journey to America. But unlike my other guests, Ming knew these ancestors well. They moved to Ohio at the end of their lives and helped inspire Ming's love of food. What do you remember about your grandparents?
Oh, they were the best. They lived in Dayton, Ohio, in an apartment a mile and a half from our house. Every Friday night was dinner at the grandparents, which I just loved because both were great cooks. Yeah, my grandfather grew everything. I mean, he'd be like, look at this cucumber, look at these chili peppers. He made his own sambal, the lajao, the spicy condiment.
Yeah.
So he would take garlic and his own chilies and make it. They would do their own noodles, their own wonton wrappers. And so every Friday we go, I'm 10, 11, 12, 13. I was so into the food.
Ming's grandparents cooked the traditional food of their homeland, but they rarely spoke of their experiences back in China, perhaps because those experiences had been so traumatic. In 1937, when Ming's grandfather was 38 years old, the Japanese invaded China, part of a conflict that would soon expand into World War II. Within months, Japanese forces entered Beijing, where Ming's grandfather was comptroller at Yenching University. Ye had been at the university for more than a decade, serving in many different roles, even designing sidewalks for the school. As the Japanese drew near, most of the university's employees fled, but a handful remained behind, including Ming's grandfather. Why do you think he stayed?
I think that defined him. It was, Yenching was his home. He really, he was a comptroller, but he already did so much to the university. And the last thing he wanted to see is everything he did destroyed. But he was he was so strong in the mind that he probably realistically thought he could take care of the Japanese himself, somehow.
This confidence was noble, but misplaced. Ming's grandfather, Ye, was arrested and thrown into a prison camp where he was repeatedly tortured and soon contracted typhus. Ye barely survived, but when the war ended, he regained his strength and returned to his beloved university to resume his duties. Then he faced a new threat. This is from the Chicago Tribune, April 8, 1947.
A typical example of communist-inspired propaganda was on the bulletin board of Yenching University.
Almost as soon as the Japanese were defeated, China erupted into a civil war between communists and what were known as nationalists. The nationalists were supported by the United States, and their ranks were filled with China's emerging middle class. The communists were backed by the Soviet Union and promised to liberate China's enormous numbers of impoverished peasants. The conflict between the two groups had been evolving since the early 20th century. Now, war consumed the entire country, a war that was ultimately won by the communists. In the wake of their victory, China's new leader, Mao Zedong, moved to consolidate his power. He authorized the execution of anyone with ties to the nationalists. Landowners, businessmen, and intellectuals were killed in droves. This kind of violence would mark communist rule in China for the rest of Mao's life. It would culminate in the infamous Cultural Revolution, which claimed tens of millions of victims, and it placed Ming's grandfather, a prominent intellectual, in terrible danger. Fortunately, he saw it coming.
They knew early on, when these rumors started coming, that they would be targeted, my grandfather. And my grandfather fled immediately. He knew. A lot of his friends that stayed were killed, just because they were threats to the government. And he absolutely would have been killed. People don't realize this simple fact. More people were killed during the Cultural Revolution than the Holocaust. Both are horrific. Obviously, the way the Holocaust was done was even more horrific with the gas chambers, whatnot. But more millions were killed. Over a longer period of time, the reasons are equally stupid. One because you're Jewish, one because you're a thinker. I mean, both are just horrific.
Ming's grandfather spent 3 years running from the communists, fleeing from Beijing to Shanghai to Guangzhou, then to Macau, until he finally reached nationalist-controlled Taiwan in 1951. He was lucky just to be alive. But freedom came at a cost. He and his wife had left behind almost everything they owned, so they had to rebuild their lives from scratch, first in Taiwan and then in the United States. Ming's grandfather would be forever marked by the experience.
Yaya was so frugal and cheap. Look, he lived through a few wars, right?
Sure.
He was in prison in Japan. And so on the hottest Dayton, Ohio summer days, you're 95, 100% humidity. My grandma would call my dad and says in Chinese, he turned off the air conditioning again, right? Because he wanted to save money.
Yeah, of course.
So then Dad would have to drive there and you cannot turn this off. And try to explain engineering-wise that it costs more energy to turn it on and off.
That's
and
true.
blah, blah, blah. He'd be like, yeah, as soon as he leaves, turn it back off. It was just, and they had plenty of money. They're not rich, but they had plenty of money for electricity. But it was the mindset.
Each of my guests had now seen their family's immigrant roots revealed and heard stories of challenges faced and overcome by their first ancestors to arrive in this country. Now, I wanted to take them back further in time, back to the most distant ancestors we could name. For Tom Colicchio, this meant going to a tiny mountain town in southern Italy, Vallata. This is where most of Tom's ancestors come from, and he knows almost nothing about them.
Those are your great-grandparents, Gaetano Marino and Raffaella Donetta Schiavina.
Schiavina.
You ever heard of these people?
No.
Using church and town records, we were able to trace his family back 6 generations in Vallata.
This is a register of deaths in Vallata in 1814. And you have Salvatore Colicchio, who was born in Vallata in 1744.
1744, man, that is before the American Revolution.
That's amazing.
Tom wanted to know why his family ever left Vallata. It looked idyllic. But our research suggested that the town, while beautiful to behold, was a very difficult place to live, buffeted for centuries by poverty and violence. Things reached a head in the 1860s when, with the population struggling to feed itself, the Italian government levied a harsh wave of new taxes. The rule of law in Vallata simply broke down. Groups of bandits known as brigands began to roam the countryside. Some even robbed City Hall. Local newspapers were filled with articles telling the citizens, arm yourself.
Sons of Abel, charged with defending your territory, the best defense is yourselves. Take up arms, and if you don't find yourselves with any, buy some. At the first sight of the brigands, ring your bells like crazy.
Ring your bells like crazy, man. They must have been living in terror.
Yeah.
Now, I wonder if your family would have joined the community defense against these bandits. What do you think?
I would imagine so.
I mean, you guys seem pretty close-knit.
I think that if you had to take up arms, my family would probably take up arms.
Some of Tom's ancestors may very well have fought the bandits. We can't tell for certain. We do know, however, that one member of Tom's family took a different route. Tom's third great uncle, a man named Vito Marino, was arrested as a bandit and brought to trial before his fellow townspeople.
So let me understand this. So he was arrested for
being a bandit.
For being a bandit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Vito Marino, the brigand, is your great-great-granduncle.
Okay.
Well, we wanted to see how Vito fared after he was caught and stood trial. Could you please turn the page?
Whoa.
Could you read the
He
transcript?
didn't do so well. The bandits were condemned to death in the killing by a firing squad outside of the Church of St. Vito.
Tom, unfortunately, your great-great-granduncle Vito was executed.
For being a thief.
He was killed by a firing squad in front of the church, in front of that church right there.
Wow. Oh, this is amazing.
The more we researched, the more we realized that Tom's family in Vallata faced extraordinary challenges for generation after generation.
Avellino, Italy, June 7th, 1910. Earthquake kills scores. An earthquake wrought havoc throughout the province of Avellino and Campania.
The earthquake demolished most of Vallata. Hundreds were killed. Much of the town lived outdoors for several months. At the same time, the population was swelling and farmland was eroding. So poverty was widespread. Do you ever hear the stories of these hardships that drove your family to migrate?
No, never heard stories about a hard life back in Italy. Again, they never spoke about it. It was almost, and maybe that was it. Maybe because it was so difficult, they just decided that they didn't want to repeat that history. They wanted to leave it behind.
Too painful.
Yeah.
Like Tom, Aaron Sanchez wanted to know more about his deep roots. We'd already introduced him to his great-great-grandfather, Rafael Gabilondo, the man who first brought his family to the United States from Mexico. The next step on our journey was Rafael's father, a man named Hilario Gabilondo. Hilario is Aaron's third great-grandfather, and he's a legendary figure in the Sanchez family. In 1857, Hilario was a commander in the Mexican army stationed in Sonora, near the border between the United States and Mexico. It was a dangerous time. Groups of Americans, called filibusters, were routinely crossing into Sonora to claim Mexican land as their own. The situation reached a crisis point in April of 1857, when an army of filibusters seized the Mexican town of Caborca. Aaron knew that Hilario had been involved in the battle that followed, but he wanted to know exactly how. We found a letter written on the third day of the fight that told the tale.
With the help of the angels, the filibusters will receive an exemplary punishment. The victory will be ours because my heart tells me so.
And can you see who signed that letter?
Hilario Gabilondo.
That's your boy, man.
Yeah. That is unbelievable. That is so cool. Wow.
Your third great-grandfather, Hilario, is essentially saying Calvary's on the way, and it's me.
Yeah, exactly.
After 6 days of fighting around this small church, Hilario and his men forced the Americans to surrender.
Your ancestor won. His men swayed the battle. They surrounded and captured all the Americans. I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, Mexicans never beat the gringos.
Yeah.
You notice that?
Exactly. It's true.
All they did was lose.
Maybe this and the Alamo are the only two examples of that, you know?
In the aftermath of his victory, Hilario was ordered to execute the American prisoners. He carried out his orders with ruthless precision, sparing only the youngest filibuster, a 16-year-old boy.
Now, the leader of the Americans, Henry Crabb, was found dead, riddled with more than 100 bullets. So they
Wow.
used him for target practice.
Yep.
His head was completely severed and preserved in mezcal.
Wow.
It's cold, boy. The bodies of the other Americans were left in the desert to be eaten by birds. Why do you think your ancestor did this?
The Americans would have done the same to the people of Caborca. So I think he did this to teach everybody a lesson. Mexicans must have been really resentful towards Americans and what they were probably telling people Mexico was like, that it was overrun with people that had no scruples and no morals, all of that. You know, and they were thinking to themselves, we were fine down here before you guys tried to take our land. So I can't tell you I feel sorry for these gentlemen, these filibusters. I mean, when you try to take something by force, this is what happens. If you don't succeed, you got to pay the piper. Do you know what I'm saying? And the rubber met the road, as they say.
In Mexico, Aarón's ancestor is still celebrated as a hero, the man who saved the entire Sonora region from American imperialism. But as we researched Hilario's life, we found something that took Aarón completely by surprise. His great-grandfather, the hero of Mexican independence, was not born in Mexico.
This is a baptismal record.
Okay.
From Bilbao, Spain in 1822. Can you imagine? Look at that thing, handwritten.
Unbelievable.
And that is the record of the baptism of your ancestor. This means that your third great-grandfather, Hilario Gabilondo, was born, Aarón, in Bilbao, in the Basque region of Spain.
That is insane. That's insane.
Aarón wanted to know how Hilario got to Mexico. It turns out, like Tom Colicchio's Italian ancestors, Hilario was fleeing a country in turmoil. In 1833, when Hilario was just 11 years old, the Spanish king Ferdinand VII died, and the country descended into civil war, one of the bloodiest conflicts in all of Spanish history. And Aarón's ancestor found himself at its epicenter.
That's a painting of your ancestor's hometown under siege.
Wow.
Over 1,000 people died in that battle alone. At a time when Bilbao's population was less than 10,000, that means 10% of the population was wiped out in this one battle. So you think that might have had something to do with why he split?
And also that just, conflict is in the blood. And, and I think it's undeniable.
Or seems to follow your family.
Yeah.
To escape the war in Spain, Hilario fled to Mexico, thereby launching Aarón's Mexican family. But he left deep roots behind. We were able to trace Aarón's Spanish family back 4 generations to the early 1700s, revealing that this Mexican chef has a far more complex background than he'd ever imagined.
Wow. That's the real deal, man.
This shows that the earliest ancestor we could find on your mother's side of your family tree was Martín Andrés Gabilondo. What's it say?
6th great-grandfather.
Martín was born on March 31st, 1713, in Spain.
That's unbelievable.
In your family history, in your mind, you all started in Mexico.
Exactly. Yeah.
But they had to come from someplace else.
It's true. It's true.
So you have deep roots in Spain, deep roots in Basque Country.
I think a trip is in order.
Man, that's your roots.
Yeah.
This is like, you can do your Alex Haley, but back to Bilbao.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So when people ask you now, when your son says, Daddy, where are we from? What are you going to say?
We're Mexican Americans by way of Basque Country, Spain. There you go.
There you go.
Unbelievable.
We'd been able to take Ming Tsai back to China with his paternal grandparents who fled the Communist Revolution. To go back further in time, we turned to a very rare document. When Ming's grandfather left China, there was one object he took with him, a book tracing the family's genealogy back to the year 891 AD. It's a treasure in the Tsai family, but unfortunately for Ming, the book is simply oral history set down by his ancestors. There's been no way to know if it's true until now. We sent researchers to China to try to confirm the Tsai genealogy. it was a long shot. The communists had ordered that all genealogical records be destroyed in an effort to break down family structures. This was, in fact, a fundamental part of the Cultural Revolution. But in some cases, stone-carved tablets, known as steles, have survived. Before communism, the Chinese landscape was dotted with hundreds of thousands of these steles. In Ming's hometown, only one remained standing. Our researcher kept asking around, and someone told her that of all of the family shrines that had existed before the Cultural Revolution, there was only one that remained standing. Can you imagine that? I mean, of all these thousands.
That's crazy.
Just one. Could you please turn the page? Can you read the transcribed name taken from the stele?
Tsai Ying.
You know who Tsai Ying is?
It's the same last name.
Tsai Ying is your 36th great-grandfather.
You're kidding me.
The one shrine that survived is your family shrine.
Come on.
That's it, baby.
I just got goosebumps. Wow. That's crazy. That's unbelievable. That is unbelievable.
The stele confirmed Ming's family history to the letter. It documented his ancestry back to 891 AD and beyond. That is your family stele that miraculously survived. And what the odds mean?
I'm so proud. That's amazing.
But for Ming, the biggest surprise was yet to come. His family stele led our researcher to records in the Shanghai Library, records that allowed us to construct a Tsai family tree that stretched back more than 90 generations.
Oh my God.
It was the largest family tree that we've ever constructed. And it connected Ming to a legendary figure in Chinese history, Huang Di, one of China's first 5 emperors, often cited in folklore as the father of the Chinese language.
Huang Di is in the lineage.
Huang Di, who lived around the 27th century BC. Good God, amazing.
I am practically speechless, which is rare. This is life-changing.
It blew our mind.
It's just incredible. That's unbelievable, right?
The record skipped several generations, so precise genealogy is impossible here. But Huang Di is roughly Ming's 116th great-grandfather, and just one of the hundreds of new ancestors that we were able to name for him.
It's just so fascinating to see and to learn that, I mean, I was always proud to be Chinese. I knew I had good family history of 34 generations. To triple that, basically, to go back to Huang Di, one of the original 5 emperors, is just mind-blowing. Mm-hmm. But it's already set in motion in my head. What did he eat? What did they all eat? How did they eat? That's almost like an immediate new quest, because there was definitely food tied in to every one of those Tsais.
Though there were no emperors in Tom Colicchio's family, when we laid out his tree, he was every bit as excited as Ming.
This combines everything that we've learned about your family tree.
That's amazing. Look at all these Italians.
How's it feel to see a document of your family like that? Names and events brought back from the dead.
It's really moving. Couple things I have to do. I have to book a flight to Vallata very soon.
That's right, absolutely.
Because I cook, I need to unearth dishes and food from this region and understand it more. Because maybe that will unlock a key as to what I do and why I do it.
All right, look at all these ancestors. Think about who you met.
Huh?
You could cook dinner for one person.
Oh, wow.
who would it be? And what would you cook?
That's a great question. God. You know, I'm gonna tell you, just because, you know, he made the trip back and forth. Francisco Tonio, I want to cook for him, and I want to cook for him what they were getting in first class on that boat. Not everyone was getting a steerage. That's what I want to do.
A big porterhouse steak, I guess.
Whatever was going on the upper decks, that's what he deserves.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
Once we reached the end of the paper trail for all three of our guests, it was time to see what DNA analysis could tell us about their more distant past. Genetic genealogy allows us to look back thousands of years and discover our origins. For Tom and Ming, our test echoed what we'd already learned and happily confirmed their cherished family roots. But Aaron Sanchez was a different matter. He had something he wanted to know, a question that only DNA could answer. The paper trail had taken his family back to the early 1700s in Spain and Mexico. But there were no records regarding his deeper roots. He knew that Mexico was a place where Spanish colonists, Native Americans, and African slaves had mixed for centuries in a violent history that ultimately produced a profoundly diverse people. And Aaron told me that he was especially eager to learn how that history played out in his own heritage.
I was hoping to know if there's any indigenous blood in my family.
Native American.
Native American, that's something that calls to me a lot, and I want to see if it's actually true.
Aaron guessed that he might be as much as a quarter Native American. And it turned out he was a very good guesser.
Can you read those percentages?
Hey, I was close.
Hey,
Look at that.
Yeah.
I'm 66.4 European.
Yeah.
24.6 Native American. Could you imagine? Wow, that's a lot.
That's a lot.
There you go.
We don't know what tribe, but you know, we know that 24.6% Native American translates to the equivalent of having one grandparent who was fully Native American.
Really? So
Yeah.
that's how you would break it down?
That's how you break it down.
Wow.
So that you have a quarter of your genome is Native American.
That's cool.
Aaron not only had a large amount of Native American ancestry, he also had a significant amount of African ancestry.
So you're 2/3 European, 1/3 Native American, and you got some brother in there, man. 3.7% is a lot. Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
That's unbelievable. Did you ever think you were a brother?
No, I didn't. But, you know, for me, this is very interesting because now I'll be able to speak so much more confidently about who I am as a person, knowing where I'm from. You know, now there's not even a guessing game anymore. Now I can speak very concretely with a lot of pride about my ancestry, my lineage. And it's very interesting because now as I hear their stories, I can understand where elements of my personality come from now. You know, and that's another real insightful part of this
I mean,
exercise.
that macho warrior part?
That macho warrior part, you know. And
Well, Aaron Andres Sanchez, thanks for allowing us to introduce you to your ancestors.
Thank you. Appreciate it, my brother. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. It's a real pleasure.
That's the end of my journey into the family stories of Aaron, Ming, and Tom. But at its core, this is a journey that will never really end. New immigrants like my guests' ancestors come to America every day, bringing new recipes and new ideas, helping to broaden our sense of who we are as a people, writing our country's history as they make their own. It's been a privilege to tell just a few of their stories. Please join me again to hear more next time on Finding Your Roots.
গত পর্বে ব্ল্যাক স্কার্ফ হোল্ডার শাফায়াত তার ব্ল্যাক স্কার্ফের পাওয়ার প্রয়োগ করে 10 মিনিটস কমিয়ে দিয়েছেন নিশাতের। সো নিশাত, আপনি চলে আসুন, আপনাকে 10 মিনিট বসতে হবে। বেস্ট অফ লাক নিশাত। সো আপনাদের সময় শুরু হচ্ছে এখন। নিশাত, আপনি পর কাউন্টারে চলে আসুন। নিশাত, আপনার সময় শুরু এখন। গো ফাস্ট, গো অ্যান্ড ফাস্ট নিশাত। মাহফুজুর রহমান, এক একটা দিন আপনার পার্টিসিপেন্টরা আসলে চমক নিয়ে আসে, আর আপনিও খুবই চমৎকার একজন মেন্টর। আজকে আপনার দুজন পার্টিসিপেন্ট, এদের মধ্যে একটা হাড্ডাহাড্ডি লড়াই হচ্ছে, কারণ একজন অন্যজনকে চ্যালেঞ্জ দিয়েছে 10 মিনিট কমিয়ে দিয়েছে। আপনি এই দুজন পার্টিসিপেন্টকে নিয়ে কি বলবেন আজ?
ওদের মধ্যে যখন চ্যালেঞ্জটা দিয়েছে, আমি মনে করেছি এটা নিশাতের জন্য অনেক বড় একটা প্লাস পয়েন্ট হবে, কারণ সবাই কিন্তু মানে সময় বলার সাথে সাথে দৌড় দিয়ে চলে গেছে। ও কিন্তু 10 মিনিট সময় পেয়েছে ওটাকে বুঝে শুনে কাজ করার। আমি আশা করি ও অনেক ভালো করবে। আর যারা সাফায়েত, আমিও আশাবাদী ওর উপর যে সুন্দর করেও কাজটা রিসিভ করতে পারবে।
সাদিয়া তাহের, আপনার পার্টিসিপেন্টকে কেমন দেখলেন?
আশা করছি ভালো করবে, বাট যেটা দেখছি আসলে সময়টা খুবই কম। এটা আসলে খুবই প্রেশার টেস্ট একটা, সো অনেক প্যানিকড অবস্থায় দেখছি। আই জাস্ট হোপ কি এক্সিকিউশনটা ভালো হোক।
নাদিয়া নাতাশা, আজকে নতুন পার্টিসিপেন্ট আপনার, ফেরদৌস আর দুজন পার্টিসিপেন্টকে আজকে আপনি ডিল করছেন। কুমু এবং নওশিন, কেমন দেখলেন তাদেরকে?
আমি যখন গিয়েছি ওদের কাছে, ওরা অলরেডি রেসিপি মাথায় নিয়ে আছে।
কুমু মেবি পাস্তা করছে, রাইট?
ওর পাস্তা করেছে, ওর একটু অন্য রেসিপি ছিল মাথায়, বাট আমি যখন অনেকগুলো অপশন দিয়েছি তখন ওর ভিতর থেকে পাস্তাটা সে সিলেক্ট করেছে। আর নওশিনের ক্ষেত্রে যেটা হয়েছে, আমি তাকে অনেকগুলো অপশন দিয়েছি, বাট ও নিজে যেটা মাথায় নিয়েছিল সে লাস্ট মোমেন্ট পর্যন্ত ওটাতেই করতে চেয়েছে। সো যেহেতু সে নিজে কমফোর্টেবল, সো আমি ওটাতেই তাকে হেল্প করেছি।
তেল ছাড়া রান্নায় আপনি স্যালমন ফিশটাই কেন চুজ করেছেন?
মৌসুমী, এটা তো আপনি বলছেন এটা দই পুডিং, রাইট?
স্ট্রবেরি দই পুডিং।
স্ট্রবেরি দই পুডিং, এটা তো পুডিং হয়নি, ছানা হয়ে গিয়েছে।
এবারে রাজশাহীর প্রতিযোগী মৌসুমী কবির, আপনার ফুড নিয়ে চলে আসুন দ্রুত।
আজকে আমি বানিয়েছি স্টিম স্যামন ফিশ, আর ডেজার্টে বানিয়েছি দই পুডিং, স্ট্রবেরি দই পুডিং।
আজকের তেল ছাড়া রান্নায় আপনি স্যালমন ফিশটাই কেন চুজ করেছেন?
বাসাতে এটা ট্রাই করেছিলাম, তো এটা ভালো লেগেছে জন্য আবার করলাম।
স্যালমন ফিশের অ্যাকচুয়ালি আমার কাছে মনে হয় যে ফিশটার যে কালার, এই কালারটার জন্য একটা অ্যাপিটাইট আসে। কালারটা দেখতে আমার ইচ্ছে করে। স্যালমন ফিশের যে একটা কালার, সেটা কুক হোক অথবা র হোক, এটার কালারটা দেখতেই ভালো লাগে। তার মধ্যে আপনি যেহেতু এটাকে স্টিম করেছেন, আবার সোয়া সস দিয়েছেন, অনেকগুলো সস দিয়েছেন, ফিশটার কালারটা নষ্ট হয়ে গেছে। আমার কাছে দেখতে কালারফুল লাগছে না। বাকি আপনার যে বেকড ইয়োগার্ট করেছেন, এটা খেতে ভালো লাগছে, এটা দারুণ। থ্যাংক ইউ।
স্যালমন ফিশ আমার খুব ফেভারিট একটা ফিশ, ভালোই লেগেছে। তবে এখানে সয়া সস দেওয়া হয়েছে, যে ফিশ সস
না, ফিশ সস
শুধু সয়া সস, তারপর আর ভালো ছিল, আর এটা ভালো। থ্যাংক ইউ, গুড ফ্রাই।
স্যালমন ফিশটার ব্রথটা আই লাইকড ইট, আমার কাছে ভালো লেগেছে, বাট স্যালমনটা ওয়ে ওভার কুকড। এটা আপনি যে স্টিমিং করেছেন, এটাকে আরও অনেক আগে নামিয়ে ফেলা উচিত ছিল। কুকটা অনেক বেশি হয়ে গেছে, সো এই জন্য এটা ফ্লেকি হয়ে গিয়েছে। কামিং টু দিস, মৌসুমী, এটা তো আপনি বলছেন এটা দই পুডিং, রাইট?
স্ট্রবেরি দই পুডিং।
স্ট্রবেরি দই পুডিং, এটা তো পুডিং হয়নি, ছানা হয়ে গিয়েছে। আপনার কস্টিং ঠিক আছে, নেক্সট টাইম আরও বেটার ডিশ নিয়ে। থ্যাংক ইউ।
থ্যাংক ইউ মৌসুমী কবি।
চ্যালেঞ্জটা সহজ হবে না, টপ 10-এর মতোই কিছু আসতে যাচ্ছে।
আজকের আমাদের থিম যেমন খুশি তেমন রাধো।
টপ 10-এ চলে আসছি, তো আমার মঞ্চটা দেখে এত ভালো লাগতেছিল, আর মনে হচ্ছে আমি প্রতিদিন আসি, বাট আজকে আবার নতুন করে দেখছি, ওরকমটা মনে হচ্ছিল আমার কাছে।
ফাইনালি আমরা পেয়ে গেছি আমাদের টপ 10 পার্টিসিপেন্ট। এখন লড়াইটা কিন্তু আরো কঠিন। তামান্না, অনেক কাঠখড় পুড়িয়ে তারপর সেরা দোষে জায়গা করে নিতে হলো। কেমন আছেন আজ?
আলহামদুলিল্লাহ অনেক ভালো আছি আজকে। আমি অনেক হ্যাপি। আমার প্রথম টার্গেটই ছিল যে আমি টপ 10-এ থাকবো। একটুর জন্য যেটা ছুটে যাচ্ছিল, আমি অনেক চ্যালেঞ্জ ফেস করেছি। আমি খুব হ্যাপি।
গুড। নিশাত, কেমন লাগছে টপ 10-এ এসে?
আলহামদুলিল্লাহ খুবই ভালো লাগছে। গত সিজনে যেহেতু চলে গিয়েছিলাম স্বপ্নের খুব কাছ থেকে, তখন চিন্তা করেছিলাম যে মহামঞ্চে যেন আমি আসতে পারি, তো মহামঞ্চে এসেছি এবং এখন টপ 10-এ, এটা ভাবতে আসলেই খুব ভালো লাগছে।
এবারে আমি এমন একজনের সঙ্গে কথা বলতে চাই যিনি গত পর্বে আমরা দেখেছি তিনি তার ক্লোজিং স্পিচ রেডি করে ফেলেছেন যে আজকে তাকে চলে যেতে হবে মহামঞ্চ থেকে। কিন্তু কেমন আছেন এই মুহূর্তে?
যদি বলি যে কেমন আছি, আলহামদুলিল্লাহ খুবই ভালো আছি। বেশি যে ভালো লাগার বিষয়টা সেটা হচ্ছে যে টপ 10-এর মধ্যে জায়গা হয়েছে, তার থেকেও বড় বিষয় হচ্ছে ভাগ্য। আমার ভাগ্যেরটাই হবে, খারাপ করলেও আমার ভাগ্যেরটাই হবে।
আমি একটু কুমুর কাছে যেতে চাই। কুমু, সেরা রাঁধুনি 1427-এ আপনি টপ 7-এ জায়গা করে নিয়েছিলেন, এখন রয়েছেন টপ 10-এ। কি মনে হয় লড়াইটা কতটা কঠিন হবে আপনার জন্য?
প্রতিদিনই চ্যালেঞ্জগুলো কঠিন। আমরা যেটা ভাবি বা যেভাবে চিন্তা করি, মহামঞ্চ আরো কঠিন করে দেয় আমাদেরকে, আরো পাজলড করে দেয়।
মহামঞ্চে সবকিছু এত আনপ্রেডিক্টেবল, আমি নিজেও পাজল হয়ে যাই আপনাদেরকে দেখে মাঝে মধ্যে। বিজ্ঞ বিচারক, আজ যেহেতু আমাদের টপ 10-এর প্রথম চ্যালেঞ্জ, তাদের জন্য আজ কি চ্যালেঞ্জ হতে যাচ্ছে?
চ্যালেঞ্জটা সহজ হবে না, টপ 10-এর মতোই কিছু আসতে যাচ্ছে।
পার্টিসিপেন্টস, আজকে আপনাদেরকে ইন্ডিভিজুয়ালি ফাইট করতে হবে। ইন্ডিভিজুয়াল স্কিলস, টেকনিক্সের উপরে আপনাদেরকে আজকে মার্কিং করা হবে।
ছোটবেলায় আমাদের স্কুলে একটা গেম থাকতো, যেমন খুশি তেমন সাজো। সেজেছেন কেউ এরকম? আজকের আমাদের থিম যেমন খুশি তেমন রাধো।
যতগুলো আমাদের থিম গেছে সবগুলাই কারো না কারো সিলেকশনে রান্না করতে হয়েছে, কিন্তু আজকে যখন ফার্স্ট শুনলাম যে নিজের ইচ্ছা মতো রান্না করতে হবে, তো অনেক ভালো লাগছিল।
আমি তো একটু নস্টালজিক হয়ে গেলাম। যেমন খুশি তেমন রাধো, তো কি রাখতে হবে বা কি করতে হবে এটা তো তারা সিদ্ধান্ত নেবে। তাহলে ব্রিফিংগুলো কি থাকছে?
আজকের চ্যালেঞ্জ যেমন খুশি তেমন রাধো। এই চ্যালেঞ্জে আপনাদেরকে দুটো ডিশ রান্না করতে হবে, দুটো রেসিপি। আর আজকের আপনাদের রাঁধুনি স্টোরে যাওয়ার সময় থাকছে 15 মিনিট, রান্নার জন্য থাকছে 1.5 ঘন্টা।
আজকে আমাদের মেন্টরস টাইম আউট থাকবে, অ্যান্ড টাস্কের শেষে আমার ফেভারিট ব্ল্যাক স্কার্ফ দেওয়া হবে।
প্রত্যেকের রেসিপি যেন সেরা রাঁধুনির এই মহামঞ্চের টপ 10-এর স্ট্যান্ডার্ড অনুযায়ী রেসিপি যেন হয়, এটাই আমাদের চাওয়া থাকবে। এটা কি চিকেন?
হোয়াইট সসের মধ্যে এরকম
কতক্ষণ কুক করবেন এটা?
এটা আমি 10 থেকে 12 মিনিট কুক করবো, কারণ আগে একবার ফ্রাই করে নিয়েছি।
বেস্ট অফ লাক।
কি করেছেন আপনি? প্যানকেক থেকে যে বাজারটা আনা হয়েছিল সেখানের মধ্যে আমি দেখে বুঝতে পেরেছিলাম যেখানে ভুনা খিচুড়ির ডিশটা আছে আর সাথে হচ্ছে যে কোয়েল পাখির ভুনা আর কি, সাথে ভুনা খিচুড়ি আছে। আর ডেজার্টের জন্য আমি গাজর যেহেতু ছিল আমি গাজর দিয়ে নারকেলের দুধ দিয়ে এসকে পায়েস করে ফেলছি।
ঠিক আছে, থ্যাংক ইউ। ওকে, বেস্ট অফ লাক।
থ্যাংক ইউ ম্যাম। শেফ কেমন লাগলো রীতা আপা?
আমার তো মনে হলো যে তাদের যে আমরা এক্সচেঞ্জ করে দিলাম তারা এটা ভালোভাবে অ্যাকসেপ্ট করেছে চ্যালেঞ্জটা। প্রত্যেকেই যা পেয়েছে ওটা দিয়ে ভালো ডিশ বানাচ্ছে এবং সবচেয়ে ভালো লেগেছে সবাই 3টে করে মানে কোর্স করছে, একটা মেইন ডিশ করছে, একটা সাইড করছে আর একটা ডেজার্ট।
শেফ আপনার কাছে কেমন লাগলো?
আমার কাছে তামান্নার লুচির আইডিয়াটা ভালো লেগেছে, স্পিনাচ ফ্লেভার্ড লুচি, মানে সামথিং নিউ। ওর থট প্রসেসটা আমার কাছে ভালো লেগেছে। মৌসুমি ক্রেম ব্রুলে করছে, ক্রেম ব্রুলে আমি জানি আপনার ফেভারিট ডেজার্ট, সো আপনার কি মন লাগছে?
আমি ওটা খাওয়ার জন্য ওয়েট করছি স্বাভাবিকভাবে। আর আমি মনে হয় জানি কোনো একটা স্টেশনে রাভিওলি করছে।
উর্মি অ্যান্ড কুমু রাভিওলি ব্যাটল হবে। সাফায়েত অ্যান্ড জোয়ারিয়া ওরা দুজন স্টেক করছে।
ও বিফ স্টেক?
হ্যাঁ, দুজন বিফ স্টেক করছে।
জানি না কি হবে, সবাই তো নাম শোনার পর মনে হয় যে অনেক বেশি ওয়াও হবে। এখানে আসার পর বোঝা যাবে কেমন কি হয়, দেখা যাক, ওয়েট করি।
জি।
পার্টিসিপেন্টস, আর মাত্র 10 মিনিটস বাকি আছে। অনলি 10 মিনিটস। দ্রুত প্লেটিং কমপ্লিট করুন, কস্টিং এন্ড কিচেন ক্লিন করুন। একদম সময় নেই। বেস্ট অফ লাক। পার্টিসিপেন্টস, আর মাত্র 5 মিনিটস বাকি আছে। সো খুব দ্রুত করতে হবে। আমি অনেকেই দেখতে পাচ্ছি প্লেটিং অলমোস্ট ডান। কিচেনটা ক্লিন করুন, আর বেশি সময় নেই। বেস্ট অফ লাক। লিনা কিচেন ক্লিন করে। আরে মৌসুমি, সসটা বাটিতে নিয়ে প্যানটা ক্লিন করে, এটা ধুতে হবে তো। পার্টিসিপেন্টস, আমি কাউন্টডাউন দেব। 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0 and time's up.
Mình sẽ lấy cả màu vàng để tô những cái chấm trên cái con quay này nữa nha. mình sẽ cái tô cả cái viên dưới này của con quay bọc màu vàng này nữa nha. Ok, và tiếp theo thì mình đã tô xong màu vàng